Hello, middle school. So Mrs. Allers sent me a list of questions she said that you had wanted me to answer in a video. So this is the video. So question one, why do middle schoolers check in earlier? So I think the reason behind this is it's undoubtedly true that younger students need more sleep. And so, as you look at a student who is, or a child who is like 4 or 5, I mean, they sleep a majority of the day, go to bed, very early. And that, of course, continues. And then as people age, they have the sort of the ability to function on less sleep. So that's one of the reasons why we have them checking earlier. The other one is, of course, we also want to have more adult checks on younger students. And so it's the same rationale where children who are very young, of course, need more adult supervision, and as they get older and become adults, they need less. And so it sort of fits the same framework of that. Now, does this mean there's a perfect correlation between age and responsibility? No, of course not. I mean, there are young people who are very responsible, and there are old people who are very irresponsible. But there's no doubt that there's a general truth to the fact that younger students are more immature, and so that is the basis of this rule. Why don't you trust us? Um, it goes to the same question where it's not that we don't trust you, but we also understand the behaviors are different between younger students. Like when I go in the gym and watch the middle school students play, I see a lot of, I'd almost term it bullying. I mean, I know it's teasing and sometimes just like play where students are wrestling and fighting with each other, but I don't really see that as much with older students. So again, there's this idea as you get older, and it's physiological. You become more able to handle responsibility, make better judgments than when you're young. Of course, you can't. Again, like a very young child might put their hand on a stove, where an older child will not, and an adult certainly does not, unless it's a gross accident. Who makes these rules? This is the third question. These rules are made from a variety of people. I mean, I'm the one who sort of collects them all, but every year I go over the student handbook with my associate deans. So it's Mrs. Meskins, Mrs. Coleman, and then we have Stuco look at them too. I know Miss Bach said she was getting feedback from a class for these rules. And then also very importantly is the dorm heads. They have a big part in this, and Mrs. Krause as the director of resident life. So there's a lot of people who go, who work together to make our student handbook. And then, of course, Dr. Auld is also part of this as well. Why can dorm heads, this is question 4. Can they change? Yes, certainly. I mean, I think over the years we've had lots of rules change. I think a very good example, I know it doesn't affect the middle school as much, but the Wednesday night privilege system, where we're trying to give at least one night a week where students don't have to be in the dorm at 7:30 if they've earned the privilege. Why can dorm heads change rules? This is the 5th question. So dorm heads have to have the autonomy to run their dorms. I mean, dorms are big, complex creatures. I mean, of course, Savoy dorm is a dorm with 80 boys in it, and so you need that flexibility to be able to deal with situations. I mean, we are not making Swiss watches; we are dealing with humans, and so there's a lot of variety. So, for instance, this year, Mr. Hitchcock, I'm trying to remember what it was. Oh, there was a lot of trash out on the balconies, so kids were throwing trash out the window. So they said, okay, everyone's checking in early at 7 o'clock, and we'll clean up the trash. And so the entire dorm came in at 7. They sent out parties to clean up the trash off the balconies and got that fixed. And you could say, well, there's no rule that the entire dorm has to check in if there's trash, but they need that flexibility in order to deal with all the situations that arise. Sometimes situations are very short, like that example. Sometimes they're longer, like if a lot of students are staying up playing video games at night, then they might make a new rule to deal with when the devices can be used at night. Number 6, why do we have these rules? Well, I mean, any type of community needs to establish some type of social contract, I think is the answer to this. So, whether we live here at school, whether we live in a country, whether we live in a tribe of people, we're always going to have rules that we make with each other to basically exist, to have some ideas. I mean, certainly, I guess you could look at cultures that have almost no rules, like the Aborigines of Australia, but they live in a very different type of environment where they're very, independent and autonomous and have no possessions, and and have like, even have a number system really. So, I think of course as we live together, we have to make rules that we all agree on and all accept in order to function well. And that's sort of the whole idea of a society. And number 7, why are the rules different from boys' dorms and the girls' dorms? I think this goes back to the question about why can dorm heads change rules? I mean, all of our dorms are different. I mean, we live in a school that has been built out of, the remains of an old hospital complexes. And so our dorms differ in size, they differ in ages, they differ in structure. There's so many different varieties that the rules are going to be different just because of the sometimes physical makeup of the dorm, sometimes the composition of the students in there. And so, we have to expect some variety in our system. And, of course, there are, I would say, I don't know, maybe it's a sexist statement to say that there are differences between boys and girls. I guess you could argue that either way in many different contexts. But, I would say there are legitimate things that happen. Like I would say the data would support that if I look at the number of young boys who've gotten expelled over the last 10 years I've been here at LAS, it's much higher than the number of young girls that have been expelled. So again, there might be a case to say that young boys need more structure and more check-ins, more rules, because their behavior is inherently not as well developed at that age compared to girls. So that could be a gender reason why they're different. But all these are complex questions, and I think the hardest thing for students is to live in a community and accept rules that might not apply to them because we have to have community rules. Of course, everyone would love to be treated perfectly as an individual, and even if you live in a house with just your parent, I mean, if you have a brother or sister, I would find that even in that situation, like perfect individuality is also conflicts with fairness. And so, while one child might get one thing because they've demonstrated responsibility, another might get a different outcome. They might argue, well, we both want the same. I mean, this debate is pretty much endless, and trying to find a good balance between having a perfectly fair system and consistent and individualized system is always, a big challenge for our school. It's one I believe in a lot. I want to work to try to do our best to both be consistent and individualized, and I think that's a lot of the work we've done with Stuco this year, making the merit system, and in general, trying to listen to the feedback of students and trying to be able to accommodate them when we can, but then also say, no, we need to have a consistent system. So, well, I hope these answered your questions satisfactorily. Of course, if you have any more, you can always come and visit me, or you can email me, and I look forward to seeing what this leads to. Thank you very much. Goodbye.